Thank you very much. A very warm welcome to our next speaker, Mr. Farooq Naiyer. He is the Chief Information Security Officer at Orion, the largest research and education network of Canada. He has the portfolio of being the lead for the Ontario Cybersecurity Higher Education Consortium. Mr. Farooq brings a rich experience of more than 18 years in the cybersecurity. He is the recipient of EC Council's Presidential Award in 2019 and CSO Compass Award in 2010. He currently serves as the Board of Advisors for the cyber-related councils in Canada, and he is also on the Program Advisory Board for the Masters in Cybersecurity and Threat Intelligence program at University of Guelph and chair of the Technical Advisory Committee at Hull Hub Durham College in Canada. So Mr. Farooq will talk about the importance of cyber threat intelligence and countering cyber threats. A very warm welcome, Mr. Farooq.
Thank you, Ji. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Just doing a sound check. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the management of COPAIR, Ms. Amna Malik, Uwais Siddiqui, for giving me the opportunity to speak today at this really interesting webinar. I'd also like to acknowledge Amar Jafi Saab for making the introduction. I also see Ambassador Khalid Mahmood Saab over here. I had the pleasure of speaking at one of the events that he spoke at, and really honored to be amongst a gathering of esteemed cybersecurity speakers for today. I shall be sharing my screen, so just bear with me. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, so the topic for today that I shall be talking about is importance of cyber threat intelligence in countering cyber threats. So before I start, in fact, Uwais, thanks for the kind introduction. So I'll probably skip this slide. I'm working on a number of initiatives in Canada and working with some institutions in Pakistan too. I was recently elected as the chair for the Committee on Innovation and Emerging Technologies as part of Canada-Pakistan Research and Development Council, which serves under the oversight of the Consulate of Pakistan in Toronto, and working really closely on that. So anyways, I'll skip this, but I shall start my session for today by first of all acknowledging that both Uwais and Amar Saab have set the stage in terms of the importance of cybersecurity, the importance of countering cyber threats in the best way possible. We need to have a national approach. We need to make sure that we have all the right stakeholders involved. But now I'm going to be talking about something which is the backbone of cyber security or cyber threat response. I'd like to start off by a famous saying from this book called The Art of War. And I recommend that everybody should read this book at some point in time. I've learned a lot from this book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And in this book, there's a famous quote which says that, know thyself, know thy enemy, 100 battles and 100 victories. So if you know yourself and if you know your enemy, you can win almost every battle against your enemy. And remember that battles always, be it 500 years ago, be it 300 years ago, be it 1,000 years ago, was always one based on information or intelligence. And that intelligence led to how you're going to be attacking your enemy from the offensive perspective or from the defensive perspective. I mean, the reason why the Chinese are so successful today is they know about all the adversaries, they know about all their friends, and that's how they have become a superpower in the world right now. Okay, let's move forward. So let's talk about the concept of cyber threat intelligence and why did I actually choose this topic. So I think the word threat intelligence is known to everybody who is present over here. I think we all know that what role does threat intel play in normal activities in the day of peace, in the day of war. And when we talk about cyber warfare, which is an ongoing thing right now, threat intelligence is a very important piece. So when you talk about the concept of threat intelligence in short is evidence-based knowledge, which includes context, mechanisms, indicators, implications, actionable advice about an existing threat or menace, or hazards to assets that can be used to inform decisions regarding the subject's response to the menace or hazard. So basically, having enough information about an existing threat or about a threat which is about to materialize. Now, usually when we talk about cyber threat intelligence, and particularly from the aspect of cyber security itself, there is a certain level of expectation from cyber threat intelligence. And the first thing is that you need to understand the threat landscape from a dynamic and strategic perspective. And from that perspective, it helps an organization or a government to prepare for and react appropriately to cyber events. And at times, it helps you in preventing a cyber threat or perhaps responding to it. When we talk about cyber threat intelligence, there are at least four categories of cyber threat intelligence that we usually talk about. So if you look at the figure on the left side of my screen, you'll see that on the left side of the upper quadrant, you'll see strategic threat intelligence, which is more high level information, more about the changing risk to the board or to the government. So basically, if you're talking from the government perspective, the prime minister of the country, the president of the country, or the chief of army staff it should be getting a strategic cyber threat intelligence report on a regular basis. So this is more for the executive management of an organization or of the machinery of the government. Then you go to the second level, which is more about tactical. So this is like for a mid-tier management. So attacker methodologies and tactics, and the consumer of this kind of cyber threat intelligence are architects, admins, security managers, departmental managers. They should have this. So this is the upper part of this whole pie. If you go to the lower quadrants, you'll see that there's operational threat intelligence also, which has details of incoming attacks. Okay, it has that information. And then you go into the nitty-gritties, which is technical threat intelligence, which is indicators of specific malware, indicators of compromise, more information about malicious IP addresses, and all that information. So you'll see that the more high you go up in this whole pie chart, you're talking more strategic and more high-level stuff. The more down you go on this pie chart, you're talking more about technical and more low-level stuff. But cyber threat intelligence at every level is important, and can be consumed by various levels of government and various levels of organizational stakeholders. Moving forward, so when we talk about threats and when we talk about threat actors, we are talking about at least 4 to 5 categories. So I would like to start off by state-sponsored threat actors, because that is something which is more prevalent when we talk about tensions in South Asia or how Pakistan is positioned. So state-sponsored activities are more categorized within the avenue of APT, or advanced persistent threat style attacks, and they are usually custom malware and exploits, and they are usually the most common attack vector or deployment tool which is used is phishing for this. And these are things which are used to disrupt activities at a critical infrastructure level, as Awais mentioned already. And these are activities which could disrupt operations. This could disrupt activities. This could be used for eavesdropping any sensitive communication. So back in August, when there was an activity originated by one of the neighboring countries of Pakistan, in which they tried to eavesdrop on WhatsApp communications of some critical or important individuals within the Pakistani government. That was something which was a typical state-sponsored activity in which they were eavesdropping on important information. So these people don't do small-time things. They would go after important pieces of information or disrupting operations, and they don't do things like ransomware, or we won't ask you for like 10 or 15 bitcoins. But these are things which are really important, and not just for Pakistan, but for Western democracies or Western countries too. Like just last night, we heard news about FBI breaking a news saying that Iran and Russia now have access to the voters list in the US. So now there is speculation about intervention of Iran and Russia in the American election. So just imagine how state-sponsored activities can disrupt ongoing activities. The other thing that I want to talk about is hacktivists. So these are hacktivists who are people who have an agenda. At times they're working as mercenaries too, or working on the agenda of governments too. And they're more into cyber vandalism, or they're also into deploying various kinds of malware or ransomware. I mean, if you recall that there were two major incidents which are making headlines throughout the world right now. One is the Emotet gang, which is an organized cyber criminal gang based out of Europe, which is now offering malware or ransomware for hire, and they are now reaching out to various countries and deploying their malware in some shape or form. Most of their attachments are actually Office 365 based files, and through that they are downloading malware into their victims' endpoints. Apart from that, organized criminal gangs are also there who are working close to this agenda. In fact, Emotet, which I just spoke about, is more on organized criminals, whereas hacktivists are groups like Anonymous, who have an agenda and who are actually going after governments. The other one, which is also should never be ignored, is insider threat. Insider threat is basically divided into two categories. One is unintentional error, or at times it's an intentional error, or somebody within an organization has malicious intent. If you look at the recent trends in terms of cyber threats, you will notice that most of these threat actors are either state sponsored, and in some cases they are insider threats also. So make sure that you guys are on the lookout for such things. Okay, so here was the description of the threat actors. Moving forward, I just wanted to shed some light on cyber kill chain. So whenever we talk about a cyber threat materializing, we often talk about the whole kill chain. How does this whole cyber threat initiate, and how is it deployed, and how does it achieve its objectives? So I think the first thing is reconnaissance. And I think this is something which most of the people who come from a military background or intelligence background would be able to relate to this. I mean, even in regular warfare, not just cyber warfare, these activities or these steps are prevalent. So the first thing is reconnaissance. So most of these threat actors, and who would fall in those four categories which I just mentioned, would do reconnaissance and active reconnaissance just to see that, okay, how does their victim behave? What are the backdoors of the victim? Okay, things like those. Then the second thing is that once they know enough about the victim, they will weaponize, configure the malware, and then they package it. And the third thing is delivery. In most of the cases, the most common delivery mechanism or attack vector is phishing. Then it's exploitation. So once the malware is delivered, that particular malware or ransomware is exploited through technical means or human means, and then various applications are infected. And then it goes to the next level, which is installation and change of characteristics. And then communication begins between victim and adversary, and then it leads to escalation of privileges and lateral movement. And then the particular threat actor is able to achieve their objectives. There are various examples of that, I think, starting from ransomware, which is usually deployed through phishing mechanism. Once it's deployed, it crypto locks the files, and then the victim has to pay a ransom against it. The same thing applies to malware, in which malware, when it installs on the victim's endpoint, it probably infects some applications or the operating system, due to which it disrupts operations or the way that endpoint is operating. So this is just a brief description of the kill chain. I just want to do a time check. How are we doing in terms of time right now?
You have time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I'll move on to the next slide now. So I'd like to bring everybody's attention towards some current challenges. So as it relates to threat intelligence, at times the term threat intelligence, or it goes by the acronym TI, is poorly understood. At times people think that threat intelligence is just threat feeds that you're getting into your firewall or into your security information event management tool or your security operations center. It's much more than that. And that's why towards the onset of today's session, I spoke about the four categories of threat intelligence: strategic, operational, technical, and tactical. The second challenge that is often faced by organizations is mature partial implementations. So at times organizations will go for implementing a threat intelligence framework or tool, but the whole implementation is not mature enough. And that's why they're not able to reap the complete benefits of threat intelligence. The third one is more about the application of threat intelligence, because threat intelligence, though, can be automated, but needs a lot of human input, making sure that you're able to get rid of the noise and make sure that you're able to segregate the noise from the actual pieces of information. And so therefore automated threat intelligence, though it's there, it still needs to mature to a certain degree. The next one is security is often viewed as an overhead. So all initiatives need to have KPIs and show value. And one thing which I can tell you right now, and I think Amar Saab also highlighted that, is cybersecurity is something which is not tangible. Investment in cybersecurity is not something tangible. You won't feel the importance of cybersecurity unless you are hit by a cybersecurity incident. If you all recall the ransomware incident at K Electric a few weeks ago, well, if K Electric wasn't hit with the ransomware, none of the critical infrastructures in Pakistan would be thinking that they could be hit by ransomware someday. The same thing applies to the Western part of the world. I mean, Canada and US have experienced numerous cybersecurity incidents which triggered lots of activities. So usually the approach towards cybersecurity is reactive and not proactive. So that's how we go. The other thing which I mentioned initially was noise and reaction required. So make sure that you're able to segregate the noise from the actual threat information so that you can focus on those things. So these are some of the current challenges that I wanted to talk about. Moving forward, there are lots of examples of threat intelligence. And I won't go into the details. They are open source tools which you can use. You can use information sharing platforms like having certs or sectoral certs or ISACs, which can be used for circulating information. In the US and Canada, we've got the concept of ISACs, which is Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Apart from that, organization-specific threat intelligence is more around information about the organization, information which is there on social media, information that is there on dark web, and phishing campaigns which are conducted against the organization. So there are various types of information and intelligence feeds which can be leveraged by an organization, but these are just some examples of that. I just want to be cognizant of time, so I don't want to go into details over here. Moving forward, I want to spend more time on this slide because we need to understand the key importance of threat intelligence and why does it matter. And these are things which will resonate with the key stakeholders in Pakistan. So the first thing is that threat intelligence helps you in lowering costs. So the thing is that cyber threat intelligence can lower your overall expenses and save your business and the government expenses because improved defense helps in mitigating an organization's risk in the aftermath of a data breach, and the organization not only suffers data loss, but it also has to bear with many costs like post-incident remediation, restoration, fines, and lawsuits. You've got Gibran Elias on the call. He'll probably talk about the cost of engaging breach response and incident response. So if you have good threat intelligence, well, guess what? You might be able to avoid a cybersecurity incident, and that would help in reducing your cost. The second thing that I want to talk about is threat intelligence helps you in lowering risks. So if you have threat intelligence, it would help you in responding to threats in a more timely manner or preventing cyber threat events. And in that case, it helps you reduce your cybersecurity risks. A third one, which is really, really important, is that if you have threat intelligence, it's going to help you prevent a cyber threat event, and that could lead to avoiding loss of data. The next thing which I want to talk about is something which also Amar Saab alluded to, is more about maximizing staffing. So bringing in threat intelligence does not create job insecurities, but in fact, it boosts opportunities for having more staffs. So once you have threat intelligence, you can have a full security operations team, instant response team, security leadership team. So it enables you to hire more people with the required skill set. The next one is more in terms of countering cyber warfare, which is more around in-depth cyber intelligence analysis. So with cyber threat intelligence, you'll be able to gather in-depth cyber intelligence, which will enable governments and organizations to respond to cyber threats and have more in-depth information about the adversary, just like it was said in the Art of the War book. Other one is threat intelligence sharing. We in the West, we often say that cybersecurity is a team sport, and threat intelligence should be shared amongst all stakeholders. Amarsab over the past few years has worked a lot in forming alliances with CERTs in Far East Asia and Asia, like the CERTs in Turkey, Oman, and Malaysia, and all that. That would really help us in fostering a CERT model. Now, moving towards the end of today's session, I think in terms of next steps, I think what organizations and stakeholders need to do is that they need to make sure that they inform stakeholders and make sure that they have the right skill sets in the organizations. So making sure that organizations and governments are investing more in people, process, and technology, and not technology alone. Make sure that all the stakeholders are involved. They learn from the past experiences and past security incidents, and make sure that the expectations are set right. We need to have a national approach, not just in Pakistan, but globally. We need to have a sector-based approach. We need to have as much automation as possible. And we need to also have orchestration as much as we can. And making sure that we get it right. If we are able to defend ourselves, we'll do a really good job at that. So using cyber threat intelligence to your advantage could help prevent big cybersecurity fiascos. So with that, I would like to end my session today. And thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farooq. You mentioned in the challenges part that TI is threat intelligence is probably poorly understood. So, and we know that in the cybersecurity realm, the private sector dominates the public sector. So what should of Pakistan to have a better understanding of the threat intelligence?
So I think I couldn't get your question. So are you talking about what needs to be done in Pakistan for better threat intelligence?
Yeah, by private sector.
So I think we need to have better public-private partnerships in Pakistan. We need to have a holistic approach in Pakistan in which the private and public sector work together. I mean, I can give you the example of Canada. I mean, we have the Canadian Center of Cybersecurity, in which we have stakeholders from the public service, from the military, from the private sector, and we all working together to make sure that we help each other out with the skill sets that we have.
Right.
Thank you very much.
I guess government or public sector should facilitate. Yeah, ma'am, go ahead. Your question. Sorry.
My question is, former advisor NSA, General Janjwal, he mentioned that, and he suggested that there should be a e-council for this threat intelligence, and to counter this threat intelligence, they should develop an e-council of cybersecurity. So what do you think, why we are unable to make it so that at the government level, we are able to take certain measures, and how the Canadian government is working in this regard?
So the Canadian, so at the national level in Canada, we have the Canadian Center of Cybersecurity, which was an initiative which was initially led by the Ministry of Public Safety, which is our Ministry of Interior. But alhamdulillah, we have been able to mature that model. So we now have 3 ministries overseeing that: Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Innovation, and Ministry of Public Safety. I think we need to have a similar approach in Pakistan, in which we have a Directorate of Cybersecurity, which is overseen not just by one ministry, but by multiple ministries. I mean, and there are similar success stories in EU, in the Middle East, in Malaysia, and in Canada that have been successful. So having a holistic approach and having all the stakeholders involved will be a better approach. We need to make sure that we also have the military involved, all the key regulators involved, to make sure that they are contributing towards the success for this. This cannot be done alone by the public sector, cannot be done alone by the military.